Hello everyone, Mr. Cunningham here, and it's my turn to read you a bedtime story. The story I've chosen is called King of the Sky. It's written by Nicola Davies and it was illustrated by Laura Carlin. And it's a book about a young boy who starts a new life in a new country. The young boy feels all lost and alone until he makes friends with an old man who keeps racing pigeons. Racing pigeons are birds that people raise and they travel far away with them, and the birds will always fly home. Together, the young boy and the old man pin their hopes on a race all across Europe and the special bird that they believe can win it, the King of the Sky. And this book is very special because it lets us all know that we should all have a right to have a home and a place to belong where people know us and love us and look after us. It's got beautiful pictures as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. King of the Sky. It rained and rained and rained. Little houses huddled on the hump-backed hills. Chimneys smoked and metal towers clanked. The streets smelled of mutton soup and coal dust, and no one spoke my language. All of it told me, this is not where you belong. Just one thing reminded me of home, of sunlight, fountains, and the vanilla smell of ice cream in my granny's shop. It was Mr. Evans' pigeons in their loft behind my house, cooing as if they strutted in St. Peter's Square in Rome. Mr. Evans' face was crumpled and he could hardly walk. But when his birds flew, he smiled like springtime. I stood beside him and watched as his pigeons soared above the chimneys and the towers, up to where the sky stretched all the way to Italy. A lifetime down the mine had taken Mr. Evans' breath away, so he spoke soft and slow, slow enough for me to understand. I like to see them fly, he whispered, after so long underground. Every day I came to see the pigeons. I'm training them to race, Mr. Evans said, and this one's going to be a champion. He put a pigeon in my hands. I felt its small heart racing underneath my finger, and the push and power of its wings. Its head was whiter than a splash of milk. Its eyes blazed fire. Name him, and he's yours, the old man said. I didn't have to think. Re del cielo, I replied, King of the Sky. Mr. Evans showed me how to catch the birds and slip them into a basket. Then we'd wheel it to the station on a barrow. How far today then, Mr. Evans? The railway man would ask. My friend would name a station up the line, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles away, a little further every time. They don't need a map like we do, Mr. Evans told me. They're born knowing how to find their way. All they want is a bit of practice. Back at the pigeon loft, we'd wait, eating Mr. Evans' Welsh cakes and squinting up into the light. "Look out now," Mr. Evans would say. "Keep those young eyes of yours well peeled." It never took them long. From places far away, places that they'd never seen, the pigeons flew home straight and fast as arrows. But the pigeon with the milk-white head was always last. Still, Mr. Evans said he'd be a winner. "He's a hero," the old man wheezed, "like the pigeons in the war, carrying messages even when they were shot. Just you wait and see." Every day, Mr. Evans grew a little weaker. By racing season, he couldn't leave his bed. So I put the race rings on the pigeons' legs and took them to the station. I scoured the sky for their return and clocked them in. Mr. Evans' bedroom wall was papered with their winnings, but not one for Re dal Cielo, my king of the sky. "He's got the wings for distance," Mr. Evans breathed. "Here's the race he's waited for." He handed me the entry form. King of the Sky would go to Rome in Italy by train, then race back 1,000 miles and more. I smoothed his feathers, looked into his eye, and put him in the basket for the journey. A part of me was going with him. I wasn't sure it would come back. The race day dawned. A storm blew up. A storm of lightning, wind, and rain. I waited for 2 whole days and nights, but the pigeon with the milk-white head, released in Rome in Italy, over mountains and seas and cities and countryside, the pigeon with the milk-white head did not return. I sat beside my friend's bed and I told him that perhaps the sunlight and the fountains and the vanilla smell of ice cream from 1,000 grannies' shops had made our pigeon want to stay. "No," said Mr. Evans, "that will only tell him this is not where you belong." The old man's eyes blazed fire. "Get out there, boy," he said, "and welcome him." The rain had stopped. I ran out to the loft and squinted up into the clouds. A speck, a blob, a bird, a pigeon with a milk-white head, a hero and a champion. 1,200 miles he'd flown, from somewhere far away he'd never been, steered north and west, finding his direction from the sun and the force that guides a compass needle, flown until he saw the shape of humpbacked hills, the lines of little houses and the chimneys, heard the clanking towers, smelled the soup and the coal dust. Flown down into the arms of the smiling, crying boy, the boy who knew at last that he was home. I hope you've enjoyed the story, and I hope you've enjoyed the tale of how we can all have a special home to call our own, where we feel welcome, loved and safe. Right, that's me done. It must be time for bed, so teeth brushed, face washed, say your prayers, and good night.